Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 166 as we get ready to move into the final third of the Council of Elrond. I was just yesterday, actually. I mentioned last week that I'm doing my annual reread of the Lord of the Rings, and I just got to this passage. I split the Council of Elrond up into 2 days. So yesterday I was just reading the second half of the Council of Elrond, and so I was paying careful attention, like watching until we got to the. I was listening to it, of course, on my phone, and I was watching until we got to the place where we got to the paragraph that we just discussed, and we're like just barely over 2/3 of the way through, which is more than I thought, actually. So we're doing well. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be finished with the Council of Elrond by midsummer, at least. I think maybe even spring. Who knows? Maybe spring. We'll get there. Anyway, so it's next Christmas. No, we'll beat that trifle. No question. We're good. We're good. Yeah. Cool. All right. So before we start, I just wanted to announce to everybody. So I wanted to tell you that it's official. I've been teasing this announcement for the last couple weeks, but we have officially launched our new Signum Academy clubs. Really excited about this program. I know there are a lot of teenagers and kids out there who are really needing more stuff to do. I know there are a lot of school extracurricular activities that have gone down and have never really been able to recover, of course, with the latest wave of COVID situation here in America. There have been, even more, changes and some places that had made progress towards going back to school are now making unprogress, but whatever. So Signum has launched our Signum Academy clubs. These are extracurricular clubs. They meet twice a week for an hour a week, small groups to get together and do creative writing workshops, to do book discussions, to do immersive conversational language. Spanish is our first language. And then to also do translation clubs to be able to do things like learning the Anglo-Saxon rune system, or actually learning for high schoolers. We're actually going to be they're going to be starting to learn how to read Anglo-Saxon. So it's going to be super fun. I am really excited for our clubs program to begin. The actual meetings, our actual opening officially of the program, the clubs themselves will begin in January. But there's plenty of time to think about it. This is something that I just encourage people to think about. It's a monthly subscription price. So basically you pay a monthly charge. It's $90 a month. And then you can do any club that you want. You can switch from one to another. You can do creative writing for a while. You can do like a book discussion, then you can do creative writing for a while, something like that. This is something that you absolutely can gift to someone else. So it makes a great holiday present, great Christmas present for kids or grandkids or something like that. So I definitely recommend this. These are all going to be really small groups. The creative writing groups and the language groups are all going to be capped at 7. The book group is capped at 10. It's a little bit bigger, but these are really small groups that we're talking about, and they're all led by our Signum faculty. These are all MAs and PhDs in their fields, and really experienced teaching at high school, middle school age level. So this is one of the biggest new programs we've launched in months. I think that this is going to be a lot of fun. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. If you go to, I see they posted the link there on Discord. Go to signumuniversity.org. At the very top of the page, you can see Signum Academy. On the drop down from Signum Academy, you can go to any one of our clubs. We also have some really fun options, and as we get closer to the end of the year, companies might want to think about this. So if you are involved in a corporation that does charitable giving, you might want to talk to folks at your work about this. We have a corporate sponsorship program with our Signum Academy Clubs program. So if a corporation would like to sponsor some clubs, so say for instance, a company wanted to sponsor kids in their city, like, to say, we can do that. So the corporation makes a donation to Signum, and we take the money that they donate, and we dedicate that to defraying the costs for enrollment, the subscription costs for the first, however, depending on the size of the donation, of course. We spread it, we make that go as far as we can. But, we'll just say, so for the first, 15, 20, 25, 50 kids from, the city of Detroit or wherever it happens to be, right, who register for the program, they'll get like 50% off their, more than 60% off their registration for a whole year. That kind of program, it's a big way that corporations and individuals too can really have an impact on their communities. To really enable kids to be able to take part, to make it even easier for kids to take part in this. So anyway, just lots of things, lots of options there, lots of things to think about. Definitely wanted to commend that to you. There's a registration form on there. One thing you'll notice when you look at the, one question that people often have, and we try to explain this, but it's unusual, I know, so some people don't really kind of like get the explanation. People will say, well, but when are they scheduled? Because we don't post times, for when they're scheduled. And we don't post times because we schedule around our registrants' schedules, right? When you register, we'll ask you, what time zone are you in? And, what times of the week are you, what times of the day are you available? And then we put together schedules that work around the schedules of our students. We don't just kind of declare times and then make everybody fit our schedules. So we always try to accommodate our schedules to the availability of our students. And we're going to be doing that with the clubs here as well. So I know that's a question that sometimes people have. But if you go to the registration form is simple and open to everybody. The payment stuff comes later. We'll get that sorted out with you once we figure out which club you're going to be in and everything like that. So feel free to register there if you're interested, and let us know. You can get in touch if you have any questions. You can get in touch with us at academy@signumu.org. That's just the word academy@signumu.org is the email address for that. So anyway, that's the biggest thing that's happening this week. Definitely wanted to share that with you, as I'm really excited about our clubs program. All right, let us get back to the text, and I want to begin with oh great, I see somebody in the Twitch chat who is joining us live for the first time. I'm so happy you caught up, Slackfish. Good, welcome. And you're welcome to join us on our Discord server as well. Druid's Fire can give you the link there to click on to join us in Discord, which is also the chat that I'm monitoring there. So anyway, awesome, great, cool, welcome. Always excited when people who have been following along. I mean, it's, of course, the more time goes on, and it's now been almost 4 full years that we've been doing these discussions. And so, of course, it's a bigger and bigger challenge to catch up with us. So that's a big deal. Oh, great! Mr. Shirley here is also joining us for the first time. Always good to see new folks. So very good. Okay. So I wanted to go back and I've been neglecting our discussion boards for a few weeks, and I want to stop being neglectful. So a couple that I wanted to pick up from there. One from Jedi Master Tessa, who's fallen a little behind, but not too far. I'm trying to catch back up and just listen to the discussion of the words wise and crafty, and I immediately thought of Nerdanel, the wife of Feanor. She is known as the Wise, which never made sense to me. This is partly anti-Feanorian sentiment, since I can't imagine anyone who willingly associates associates with Feanor being considered wise, and she never seems to try to rein him in. But also, I just don't have any examples of her being wise, and I've never heard an explanation for the title. But crafty? She's supposed to be a brilliant sculptor. Of course she's crafty and skilled and creative. Is that what her epithet really means, that she's a strikingly good artisan? Then again, there are also a group of people described as the wise in Middle-earth. I assume that doesn't refer to their crafting ability. So is Tolkien using the word in multiple different ways? If so, how do we know how we're supposed to interpret it? Wonderful question. First of all, well, no, not first of all. Second, I'll do that second. I'll talk about Nerdanel's career second. First, just as far as the word and the general question, is Tolkien using the word in multiple different ways? Yes, I think he is. And to make it harder, right, to make it more complicated, I get the impression that he's often using it in multiple ways at the same time. I think that the two senses of the word wise, the more modern sense, but it's not like this is a brand new sense of the word wise, meaning having wisdom, right? I think that is the prime. And certainly when we're talking about like the Council of the Wise, that is the way that the word, I think, is predominantly being used. When Saruman says, as we just saw, I did not expect you to show wisdom even in your own account. He's not suggesting that he didn't expect Gandalf to, make something with his hands. He's talking about showing wisdom, in the traditional, sort of the kind of normal sense. But the older use of the word wise to mean adept with your hands, having the cunning and ability to make things, even a kind of engineering ability. I'm thinking here of the wisdom of Merlin, and the ways in which Merlin's wisdom was manifested in being able to disassemble and reassemble Stonehenge very rapidly, which again was like an engineering feat more than it wasn't magic. It was just he knew how to do it. And that, I'm pretty sure that passage comes from Geoffrey of Monmouth, the History of the Kings of Britain. Anyway, point is, that older sense of wisdom is clearly there, and I think that there are moments when we can see it. And I hadn't thought of Nerdanel, Jedi Master Tessa, but I do suspect that that's very likely involved. Now, I think that she was also wise in the traditional sense as well, not only crafty and skilled and creative. She was a brilliant sculptor, and she's the daughter of the greatest of the smiths of the Noldor. Well, second greatest to Feanor, but who taught Feanor a lot. So there are several ways in which she could be considered wise. I do think that she is being complimented for her wisdom here, and I know it might seem that she wasn't particularly showing off her wisdom in her choice of a husband. I get it. That's true enough. But I can't blame Nerdanel. I think she does as well as she can't rein him in, but that's not her fault. It's not that she doesn't try. And in fact, like, the two become estranged and she eventually leaves. I mean, she's one of the minority. Think about it. Think about the people, the Noldor, who are swayed by Feanor's words into following him out of Valinor. But his wife Nerdanel is not one of them, right? She resists the power of Feanor's rhetoric. I think she's heard Feanor's rhetoric a time or two before, right? Anyway, so she yeah, exactly. As Frumius Boojum says, the Valar couldn't persuade Feanor either. So yeah, like, I can't blame Nerdanel for Feanor, right? I mean, she was his wife, she wasn't his keeper. And I really don't think that there's too much that, too much more she could have accomplished. And yet I do think that she is credited for wisdom, and I believe that she was really wise again, even her separation from Feanor. to me sort of suggests her wisdom. She couldn't rein him in. She didn't have that power, but she always knew when to cut bait. Basically, I mean, it was there you go. Okay, and but anyway, yeah. But as far as the general question, to some extent, I think that the word wise, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the discussion that we had about the word fair. How the word, the word fair has a kind of a broader meaning, right? Meaning beautiful, just as the word wise, means having wisdom, right? But of course, fair also has a more kind of technical meaning, which is blonde, right? Specifically. But of course, when you're talking about someone who is blonde and also beautiful, in what sense, like what is being emphasized when the word is being used? In other words, I think that there are definitely some times when Tolkien uses both of these words, fair and wise, in both senses at the same time, essentially. Sometimes I think it's kind of a play on words on Tolkien's part. I mean, he's perfectly well aware that older usage of the word wise is archaic. It's not. I'm pretty sure, that even at the time, even 100 years ago, they were not using the word wise still very much in that way. That had, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think the word wise, I quoted at the time a couple instances of when the word wise or wise-hearted is used that way in the King James translation of the Bible. I think it was archaic then. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to look into that more, but I don't think it was a comment. There are some instances of that, King James isms that were not cutting edge modern usages, even in 1614 or whenever it was the King James Bible was published. But anyway, yeah. Yeah, as Curiata says about Nerdinel, she was wise enough to see his talent, when he was young, and wise enough to nope out when he went too far. Yeah, I guess, there you go. What more can you ask? I mean, you can't say she didn't, she can't pick him. And I mean, she did in fact marry the greatest of all of the Eldar ever to live. So on the one hand, it's kind of hard to do better, right? What are you going to hold out for if Feanor's not good enough for you? But yeah, she did also know where to draw the line. So there you go. And Dan, I certainly agree. Nerdinel is one of the first in a long line of women in the Silmarillion who are quite a bit wiser than the men around them. Yes, that is a trend. And Dan, something that I found really interesting, especially in our study of Morgoth's Ring in the Mythgard Academy sessions, that when Tolkien is revising that Silmarillion stuff later on after he wrote The Lord of the Rings, one of the patterns that was really perceptible was both his beefing up and even adding to the female characters. He was in the Silmarillion tradition. He did a lot, not a lot of it. Well, I want to be careful about that. Much of it did not get into the published Silmarillion. Some of it did, but not all of it. And so it's interesting. But Dan, my point is that trend is even more perceptible. Like you can see him kind of Tolkien consciously shifting in that direction, I think, in many cases. Right. Yeah. Green Great Dragon says Celeborn wasn't around. No, but he was still like the role model, right? Yeah. Anyway, okay, sorry. But anyway, so great question, Tessa. Thanks for that. There was another there was another post on the discussion board from somebody who had just listened to session number 7. And had a comment about it, which was a great comment. I'm not going to go back there. Not that I wouldn't, but I'm not going to just now go back all the way back to chapter 2. But I just thought I would sort of acknowledge that and say hi, because that person will probably not be listening to this for about 2 years. But anyway, love to see that kind of intrepidity. But one more slightly more recent one, Matt missed last week. I saw Matt was here this week. But he pointed out a horrible omission. There was a word we missed discussing in one of our paragraphs last week, which is quite shocking. He says, I did notice one word we missed in the discussion of the first slide. They took me, and they set me alone on the pinnacle of Orthanc. The they here, mentioned twice, implies some of our imagined stagings, Uruk-hai or men entering with bows drawn at the end of the discussion, have a basis in the text. It also goes a long way to explaining how Saruman so easily overcame Gandalf. It wasn't that Saruman was significantly more powerful than Gandalf. The conversation following the flooding of the Ring of Isengard implies Saruman was not expecting a large power differential between wizards. It was that Saruman had maneuvered Gandalf into a position where he knew Saruman had arranged things so that he had the upper hand and there was no point in fighting. Indeed, there is an implication that the unnamed they, that Saruman didn't escort him to his prison. The plural also stresses the series of singular pronouns that come, where Gandalf is pointing out how alone he is when surrounded by a sea of enemies, a sea that Saruman has now disappeared into. It has moved beyond a struggle within the White Council. Now Saruman is a power in the world, akin to Rohan or Gondor, rather than an independent operative. Excellent. I think that that's a really wonderful point. They took me and they set me alone on the pinnacle of Orthanc. We know he's got backup. We know he's not alone, right? But yes, the fact that Gandalf's capture was not a capture by Saruman single-handedly in that sense. And it certainly does, I think that Matt's observation here certainly does underscore the fact that there's no fight. Right, there's no fight between Saruman and Gandalf. I do think that Saruman was prepared for a fight, as we said before, but I don't think, we talked about this a bit. As Matt was referring to, I don't think Saruman ever intended to fight fair. That's something I think that we said at the time, but it's worth re-emphasizing. Someone was asking if Saruman thinks that Gandalf has the ring. Why would he think he'd be able to take it away from him, right? To contest him. Well, easy. He already knows from historical proof that somebody who has the ring can still be killed if they're shot full of arrows, right? So I'm sure that Saruman took measures in that regard. I don't think he plans to have a heroic one-on-one fight, in which he gestures to all of his lackeys to stand aside and let him fight Gandalf alone. Heck no. I suspect that he had Gandalf ready to be riddled full of holes as soon as things went in that direction. Anyway, I agree with Matt that this does seem to support that kind of idea. He is confronting Saruman. Gandalf, obviously, in his narrative, emphasizes what Saruman says and does and the interactions between the two of them, because that's the news, right? That's the story that he's bringing to the council. But, it's not really, it's not the whole, there were obviously other persons there in the room. And I agree. Probably Saruman was not there to escort Gandalf all the way up to the top. Michael Tobias was saying he wanted to talk about the difference between fairy tales, where the heroes and villains work and act alone, and imagined history, where we see full infrastructures and societies with hierarchy. Yes, Michael, and that's one of the big differences between The Lord of the Rings and the earlier works that Tolkien wrote, including The Hobbit. And this is really important to remember, right? Tolkien does such a brilliant job of retconning The Hobbit into The Lord of the Rings, right? When he's as The Lord of the Rings develops out of The Hobbit and goes in some very different directions, Tolkien does, not to mention, obviously, the Chapter 5 business, right, with the actual revision of The Hobbit, but even the parts that are not revised. He does such a wonderful job of bringing The Hobbit into, into this world, this larger world that he's built around it, that it's easy to forget the fact that fairy tale, of course, Michael, is exactly the phrase that he used to describe The Hobbit. Like that is the kind of story that he was writing at that time. And there is so much in The Hobbit. If you read The Hobbit and you try as hard as you can to forget about The Lord of the Rings, right? Act like you've never read The Lord of the Rings in your life and read The Hobbit, you can see, Michael, exactly those kinds of things that, as you say, where we don't see full infrastructures and societies with hierarchy. We get some, especially towards the end, we get a little bit more, right? Like about the, the economy around the Long Lake and things like that, right? He's starting to gravitate in that direction, wondering what the dwarves are going to eat if they're besieged all winter, and being concerned about the people of Lake Town who are going to die of hunger and exposure during the winter. From chapter 10 on, it's already beginning to move in that direction, but it isn't fully there. And for most of the earlier part of the story, chapters 1 through 9, I say chapter 10, the shift in The Hobbit really happens when the dwarves crawl out of the barrels. From then that's when the story really changes. But anyway, but in the first 9 chapters, yeah, we don't get much like that at all. And of course, Michael, even more significantly, the Silmarillion didn't get more like that. The Silmarillion is not that kind of story either. That is the kind of the imagined history, right? Not a fully imagined. It's much more fairy tale like. It had been shifting as well. It had been gravitating in this direction, but it hadn't really fully made that step yet. That, of course, again, is what we were discussing so frequently during our long discussion of Morgoth's Ring during the Mythgard Academy class. And I know that, the history of Middle-earth isn't for everybody, but that series on the history of Middle-earth that we've been doing in the Mythgard Academy has just been like a life-changing experience for me. So, I can't recommend it enough. It has been an amazing sort of immersion into Tolkien's creative process. It's been incredible. But the Morgoth's Ring discussion in a special was really exciting in these ways. But yeah. So Michael, thanks for bringing that up. And Turambar, I do agree with you that it seems that Saruman began his ownership of the ring in the worst way imaginable, without ever seeing it. Yeah, no, exactly. You're right, Turambar. If anybody was prepared to one-up Smeagol, right? Murdering your best friend in order to take the ring off of his body is bad. That's a bad beginning, right? There's no question. But what Saruman is going to do is arguably worse. And I don't think it's arguable. I think it's definitely worse. Gollum's murder was at least a spontaneous act of passion, right? It was at least like a second-degree murder, right? It wasn't, but whereas Saruman has elaborately premeditated, I think. And not only is it elaborately premeditated, but it is also, of course, a betrayal, right? A betrayal of, he is supposed to be, not only is he Gandalf's host, right? But he is also Gandalf's superior in the council. He's the head of the council. And there are so many different kind of levels of faith and trust that Saruman is exploiting in order to bring Gandalf into this situation. That the more I think about it, the less questionable I consider it. This would be way, way worse than Gollum's start. And yes, Green Great Dragon, Saruman should know better. Whereas, as you're suggesting, I think Smeagol, he can't understand the implications of what. I don't mean he doesn't know that murdering that strangling his friend to death is wrong, right? He knows that, right? But yeah, he in the bigger sense, right? He doesn't kind of know what's at stake here. Yeah, I agree. Slackfish asks, if Saruman was prepared to kill Gandalf if necessary, why wouldn't he just follow through to be certain he doesn't have it on him? Well, I think that before Gandalf, I think that Saruman is pretty certain from their conversation that Gandalf doesn't have it. I think that he thinks he would know if Gandalf has it, and I'm not sure he's wrong about that. I also think that there are good reasons for him not to kill Gandalf. Saruman is definitely planning to try to get more information. Yeah, as Tarloniel says, Gandalf is Saruman's best lead, right? So that's one very good reason. He's also a bargaining chip with Sauron as well. So there are several good reasons, which again, when you also factor in the degree of self-confidence that Saruman has, he's pretty sure that he knows that Gandalf doesn't have the ring. So yeah, I think that he still wants to keep him alive. Yeah, Forthong says, if we're thinking of this as the beginning of Saruman's ownership of the ring, could we consider part of his speech a ring-induced monologue rather than a good faith attempt to persuade Gandalf? No, because of course he doesn't actually own the ring, right? I mean, it's just exactly like Smeagol's ownership of the ring, apart from the ownership part, right? And he doesn't follow through with the murder, right? So there we go. It would have been worse, but no. So I can't think that it's exactly a ring-induced dialogue. It's a Saruman-induced dialogue, right? I mean, his desire for the ring, he wants the ring, but it is his own desire for power. The ring is important to him as, well, I was about to say as a symbol, makes it sound as if it were merely of symbolic importance. No, it's of literal, material importance to him. But he is not being won over by the ring. He's not being tempted by the ring itself. Like, the ring is not acting on him directly. The ring's an idea to Saruman, a very attractive idea, right? But he is sold out for the idea before he's ever come within miles of the ring. I wonder how close Saruman ever has gotten to the ring. I wonder at what point in his life Saruman was most physically proximate to the Ring of Power, because I don't see much evidence that he was ever that close to it. It's interesting in that, I just, not usually a question I would ask, but thinking about the proximity of the ring and the temptation of the ring, Saruman is on the low end of the scale of folks who could have been directly influenced by the ring in any way. Let's see what Bjarnasonar. I agree. Boy, imagine how bad he would be if he did get the ring. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And that's a good point. Maybe when the Fellowship goes through Moria, might be the closest he ever gets. It's possible. Yeah. Well, Michael Tobias, let's hold off on ring-induced monologues further. We'll wait till we get to another one. They do seem to happen either in the presence of the ring or even from people who are possessing the ring. It's possible that there are a lot of people having ring-induced monologues that we never hear. But I don't think so. I doubt it. I think it is. I do think that there is a certain amount of proximity here, but, Anyway. Yeah, and Matt, I agree with you. He doesn't need... Saruman is going to have... A ring-induced monologue, the thing that characterizes a ring-induced monologue, and this, by the way, is an example of me not talking about this right now, the the characteristic of the ring-induced monologue is the rationalization of the process of why you should do it, like why it's okay. You talking yourself into the idea that it's okay for you to take the ring. And as Matt points out, he doesn't Saruman wouldn't even have that experience because he is fully ready to claim the ring and he's prepared to do it. There's no need for temptation. It's not an issue with Saruman. He's already convinced himself, right? Self-tempted and self-fallen. He's already there. He's already there. Okay. Let's see. Does Saruman refer to the ring as precious at any point, Dan? No evidence. He didn't. He didn't in his speech. I'm sure we'd have noticed that if he had. He didn't do that in his speeches. So, and that's, it doesn't, the absence of it doesn't prove anything, but certainly the actual use of the word precious correlates pretty highly with, it seems, the direct impact of the ring. Yeah. Emma Thorne says Saruman thinks the ring should call him precious. Yeah. Scudo wants to know if I think Saruman is dominated by Sauron. Let's not go there yet. Now is not the time. We'll come back to this a little bit later. I think we're going to have to come back to this at the Palantir episode, because that's really the first time that we get the contemplation of that question of Sauron's influence. Because here's the other thing to remember. There is a certain extra textual evidence supporting the idea that Saruman needed no corruption from Sauron in order to go the direction that he's gone. And what I mean by extra textual is, if we look outside the narrative, or more specifically at the history of the narrative, the Palantir gets invented when it gets chucked out the window. It's pretty clear from the manuscripts that the Palantir was not a glimmer in his eye until, Pippin, until like Gandalf ducks and Pippin pulls it out of the water. I mean, there are a lot of instances in Tolkien stories where this kind of thing happens, where a thing comes up and in his story, he kind of discovers a thing in his story and then like figures out the significance of it. And the stones, it's after the discovery of the Orthanc stone that he really begins to work through what this is and what that meant and how it would have impacted the story. So what I'm saying is this scene was written before the Palantir was a glimmer in Tolkien's eye. So when Tolkien wrote this so we have some pretty strong manuscript evidence to suggest that Tolkien when Tolkien wrote this scene, in Tolkien's mind, Saruman had merely fallen to the desire for power, which was not linked. It's not that he was uninfluenced by Sauron at all, right? That he was unconnected with Sauron in any way. But yeah, he it is certainly not the case that, certainly in Tolkien's mind, the corruption of Saruman does not begin with a kind of direct control from Sauron's mind. There was no mechanism for such control. Not to mention the fact that it's wholly needless. That is one of the things that Tolkien depicts very well. One of the things that Tolkien is very interested in so many of his stories is, how do you end up going down the bad trail, right? How do good people doing good things and seeking good ends end up becoming villains? How do they end up going down the path to their own destruction? This is something he is interested in. He was a little bit interested in this at the beginning with Morgoth and became more interested towards the end. Again, we got some of that in Morgoth's Ring. With Sauron, he's interested to this, again, increasingly interested in this as time goes by. Saruman is a wonderful example of this kind of thing. Boromir, of course, and what happens with Boromir is a really interesting drama in this kind of case. Anyway, that's yeah. So there's a lot of there are many examples of this kind of thing, even with Smeagol and Gollum, I think. So anyway, I think that even just thinking from that reason in general, I think that the idea that Saruman only goes bad because he's pulled, like against his will, or because his will is overpowered by Sauron. It's not in that sense a kind of dualistic world, right, where he's being drawn over by the evil power. No, he's making his own choices, and he makes the same kinds of choices for very similar kinds of reasons that Sauron before him did and Morgoth before him did. Ungoliant, right, should have mentioned Ungoliant as another example of those creatures who kind of go down this path. Feanor, praise, absolutely. Lots of really good examples. So anyway, so Saruman seems to me clearly, first and foremost, one of those examples. And of course, he becomes a very prominent one over the course of the Lord of the Rings. So I wouldn't want to sort of cheapen Saruman's significance, in a sense, Saruman's own will, by attributing his fall merely to that kind of external, purely external corruption. Anyway, okay. Let's go back to the text now. All right. Yeah, Emily, that's really hard. Emily says there was something off about Saruman from the start, wasn't there? At least Galadriel indicates Gandalf should have been the leader of the wizards. Well, Galadriel's invented after Saruman's art. This whole plot. Well, let me say this another way around. The concept that one of the great wizards of the council has fallen into evil and become one of the leaders of the enemy party predates the existence of Saruman as a character. That was the Witch King. That was the story of the Witch King, or the Wizard King, as he was called prior. He was the wizard gone very bad. And then that storyline shifted over to Saruman when Saruman's character was invented, right around the time when Tolkien wrote this scene of Gandalf going to Orthanc. But Galadriel was invented after that. So there's a sense in which, again, if we're thinking about it from this point of view, nothing Galadriel could say could be evidence, right? Because she herself didn't exist before that point. But yeah, there was no... The first thing... Saruman's character was invented to fall here. There is no story of a good Saruman, before his fall, in a sense, or right. The only kinds of stories that were written about the pre-fall Saruman are written after he's fallen, essentially. So it's therefore it gets kind of written back into his earlier story to some extent. But yeah, I know for Thoughtless, I'm trying to be, that's why I was flagging it as extra textual evidence, right? We do need to be careful using textual history to infer Tolkien's understanding of his characters' behavior and motivation. Yes, one does always have to be careful about that. That's why I flagged it. And you know, because I want to contextualize that. It doesn't like prove anything because Tolkien's, the story, his mind can change and his concept of his stories can change over time. So it doesn't prove it. What it does prove, if it proves anything, it proves that that was certainly not the story from the beginning. That's the thing that it proves, right? So it is certainly, at the very least, it demonstrates that it is very, very easily possible to think about it in that way. So if one has a hard time imagining that Saruman being in the position that he's in with Sauron with the Palantir, how could he possibly be driving the bus? How could he be the one really making the calls as far as what he's doing? It maybe helps us to understand or to imagine that kind of thing is sort of possible. Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's go back to the text. So Gandalf has just described himself up on top of the tower, right? Looking out and worrying and hoping and fearing. And we looked at the passage, the Butterbur versus Sauron passage last time, which I love so much. Frodo interrupts again. What's the score now? Who's interrupted more often? I think it's 2-2. Now has now Frodo and Boromir each interrupted twice at this point now? It's interesting. This little they're like the two unruly members of the council. Bilbo is a little bit unruly too, but in a different kind of way. He doesn't kind of break in on people in the same way. Is this 3 for Frodo? Trifle? It's possible. I might have lost score. And you're right. Glowin got one in, Nancy too, right? Yeah, he definitely. You were not so tender with me is definitely counts, no question. But anyway, okay. I saw you, cried Frodo. You were walking backwards and forwards. The moon shone in your hair. Gandalf paused, astonished, and looked at him. It was only a dream, said Frodo, but it suddenly came back to me. I had quite forgotten it. It came some time ago, after I left the Shire, I think. So, first of all, when did it come? Do you remember? Who remembers when Frodo's dream about Gandalf came? Yep, Tom Bombadill's house. Remember, he had 2 dreams. The first one, the dream of the tower by the sea, right? And then he had the Gandalf on top of a tower. This scene that Gandalf has described, and that Frodo now suddenly remembers. He had while he was in Tom Bombadil's house. And it ended, Mike, it ended with the sound of the galloping hooves, right? And he wakes from that thinking, Black Riders, and expecting to see the turf outside the window all covered with hoof prints, the hoof prints of Black Riders. Right, exactly, yeah. The tower by the sea was at Crick Hollow, and this was his dream in the house of Tom Bombadil. Now, what do you make of this? Frodo barely remembers it, right? I mean, he doesn't remember clearly when he had it. I mean, he's right, after I left the Shire. Yeah. Now, Gandalf says, "Then it was late in coming," said Gandalf. "As you will see, I was in an evil plight, and those who know me will agree that I have seldom been in such need, and do not bear such misfortune well. Gandalf the Grey, caught like a fly in a spider's treacherous web, yet even the most subtle spiders may leave a weak thread." So, hang on now. Does it sound like Gandalf is downplaying what just happened there a little bit? Yeah, Mad Violinist, it's exactly what I was just thinking. He says, interesting how this remarkable bit of vision gets buried and passed over. Yeah, I mean, Gandalf's he pauses and looks at him astonished, like, wait, you what? You dreamed? Oh, you dreamed me in Isengard? And then Gandalf is merely like, yeah, then it was late and, well, it was too late, right? Your visionary experience was anachronistic, Frodo, right? You failed to have foresight or even just sight. It wasn't even a current events dream. It was a recent events dream, right? I don't really get it. I don't really get it. Frodo failed. That's a little harsh. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Can't you have slightly more timely visionary dreams, Frodo? They'd be a little more useful in that case. There are obvious questions to be asked on several different levels, right, about Frodo's vision here. And not just about Frodo's vision, but about Frodo's mentioning of his vision, about the bringing up of Frodo's vision here, right? How does Frodo get his vision? How is it provided? Why is it provided? Right? And then why why does nobody make anything of it? As Flammifer says, the council is remarkably disinterested in divine revelations. Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh yeah, whatever. Miraculous revelation to the halfling, whatever. Anyway, go on, Gandalf. Tarlonio, I don't think Frodo has told anyone about his strange dreams before this. I bet you Sam's astonished too, over in the corner, hearing Frodo say that. I think it's surprised. I mean, Gandalf would probably have infenestrated him at this point if he hadn't already been sitting in the room. Yeah, as Prey says, Boromir's already had one of these. It's old news, though. That's exactly what I'm wondering. Praise is that it does. We have had a precedent, right? And the precedent in the council, right? The vision of Faramir and once of Boromir, is that was a big deal. That was a big deal, and it was targeted in its particular way, right? I mean, it was a message for them to they received this, they took this as a message, as a call to action to them. What's the point of Frodo's vision? Yeah, I mean, Sam's asking if Gandalf is surprised he hasn't brought this up outside of the council. Well, he hasn't had much chance. I mean, he's had one conversation with Gandalf since he woke up. He didn't sit next to him at dinner, so there's not been much chance for it. Well, Flammifer, I can agree in a sense. Flammifer says Boromir's divine vision was also pretty much downplayed by the council. In one sense it was. And, Flammifer, perhaps you're right. Perhaps that's sort of suggestive in itself, right? That, okay, so, I wouldn't say his vision is downplayed, but the fact that it's an inspired vision. There isn't anybody at the council who's like, wow, how is it that you were sent this vision? I wonder who sent it, and I wonder, like, what does it mean that a vision should be sent to Gondor in this hour? Like, no one is questioning. Everyone's like, okay, yep, divine vision. Let's talk about what it means, right? I mean, they do talk about the meaning of it. Aragorn's response, and here, more will be made known to you. I mean, he seems pretty. I mean, no one disputes that it's a divine vision, but you're right. Nobody makes a big deal of that fact all by itself. Yeah. Praise, you're right. Until he knew the events it was connected to. That's why he cries out here, because it's only in this moment that Frodo realizes that he did have a vision, right? He just thought he was having a dream about Gandalf, like a slightly weird dream about Gandalf. So it makes all kinds of sense that he would not have mentioned it to anybody. I mean, dreaming about Gandalf again, Frodo, like that wouldn't have seemed strange. It only seems strange even to Frodo himself at this moment. I saw you. You were walking backwards and forwards. The moon shone in your hair. I love just the visual sense of it, right? Like Frodo is trying to prove, I mean, on the one hand, if it's evidence that he's giving, it's kind of funny evidence. I mean, what's Gandalf going to be like? You're right. The moon was shining in my hair. You really did see me. Yeah, Fourth Dauntless, I agree. Frodo didn't even necessarily know it was Gandalf he was dreaming of at the time. Yeah, you're right. No, I don't think, Lysalinda, that he's just ignoring Frodo's words exactly. But let's go back to the question that Brandon was asking before. Why did it come late? Why did it come late? I mean, in a very simple... Now, the conclusion that we came about it at the time, as I recall, and as someone, I forget who, was just reminding, maybe Trifle, was just reminding us, the point of the dream, it seems to have been a reassuring dream to Frodo, which he misinterprets, right? First, he sees the vision of Gandalf on the tower, which he's not quite sure he understands that. And then he hears the sound of galloping coming from the east. And of course, I was arguing at the time that it's not the Black Riders he's hearing, it's Gandalf that he's hearing. That a paraphrase of Frodo's dream could easily be, Gandalf is late because he was held prisoner. See? But don't worry, he's on his way, right? Because Frodo's wondering what happened to Gandalf. Why has Gandalf betrayed us? Why has Gandalf let us down? Why has Gandalf failed us? And those, the answers to those questions, he's essentially given the answers to those questions in his dream, as well as a reassurance that Gandalf is on his way and approaching very fast. And that part, Mad Violinist, yes, I think that part is current, right? Gandalf was in fact riding hell for leather to the north at exactly that moment. So it's not that the vision isn't necessarily late in coming because it's not the whole story, right? The first part is an in-dream flashback to what was before, and it's the latter part, the galloping part, that is in fact current events, right? Here's another question. Why is this... So, here's the reason why I think the dream is worth thinking about more now. Well, because it comes up. Right? It seems really simple, but it didn't have to. The dream of the tower never comes up again. Then it's Frodo's Crick Hollow dream, right? About the sea, the tower by the sea. That doesn't come up again. This gets brought up again. Forcibly brought up again. So why is it that we why is it that we get reminded of it, right? We're invited to think about it here. Right, exactly, JJ. It's an explanation of Gandalf's tardiness, not a call for help. The dream isn't a call for help. It's not a call for action. It's not like seek for the Gandalf that is lost, right? In Isengard, he's trapped. Like, that's not the message of Frodo's dream. This is not helpless Frodo Baggins, you're our only hope. This is reassurance to him, right? Yes, Gandalf was delayed. There's Gandalf impatiently pacing around, but now he's coming. I wonder. Matt is wondering if it says then it was late in coming. No, I think the verb though, Matt. So then it was late in coming. What is late in coming was the dream. I think because of the past tense. It was late in coming, as you will see. Yeah, well, Mad Violinist is wanting to correct the to say, is it Frodo, help is on the way, but you're on your own for now, so proceed with care. Yeah, I mean, that second part of it, certainly, he should certainly be proceeding with care is definitely indicated, no question. So it's definitely not, you don't have to worry about anything anymore because help is on the way. It's on the way, but it hasn't arrived yet, right? Yeah, Slackfish, I wonder. Slackfish is asking, does Gandalf have a change of attitude between paragraphs 2 and 3? I was in an evil plight, and those who know me will agree that I have seldom been in such need and do not bear such misfortune well. I don't know if it's exactly a change of attitude. It is a change of mood, right? He's not kind of... he was describing his state of mind while he was on top of the tower, that kind of gloomy and contemplative state of mind in which he was brooding about hopes and fears and, worried and frustrated. He's kind of emerged from that, and he now speaks of it much more sort of from the outside. I was in an evil plight. I have seldom been in such need and do not bear misfortune well. Gandalf knows the dream was late because he knows when Frodo left the Shire, and Frodo says that the dream came after he left the Shire, so he knows that he was already out of Orthanc. Not too long before. I mean, it's not wildly inaccurate. He's going to say, isn't he, right, in a page or so, that he left Edoras at the same time that Frodo left Buckland. So he is furiously galloping at the time that Frodo has his dream in the House of Tom Bombadil a day later. But he only escaped from Isengard, just a couple days before that. So, okay, there we go. From Appendix B, Flammifer says Gandalf escaped Orthanc on the 18th of June, and the dream is on the 27th. Okay, so it's a few days. Yeah. It's 9 days? Huh. What's Gandalf doing for those 9 days? Huh. Weird. I mean, galloping, I guess, but... that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time. No, he doesn't. He doesn't walk to Edoras. Gwaihir takes him at least most of the way. He's discussing where Gwaihir's going to take him, and he asks Gwaihir to bear him to Rohan. You know, probably not the threshold of Meduseld, is probably not where Gwaihir drops him off, but considering the enormous expedition with which folks have had to travel and cover ground, it seems that Gandalf, who actually is in a hurry and acquiring the fastest horse on the earth, takes a remarkably leisurely time. Yeah. Anyway, okay, sorry. That's more time than I would have expected. That's all. I mean, even if it does take him a couple days to find and tame Shadowfax, I get that. But even that seems odd in its way. But yeah. Still odd. Like, just when everyone else is hurrying. Yeah, it is a casual stroll through Rohan. I agree. Anyway, okay. Where was it? Okay, let's see. So good. Thank you on Twitter there, David Maloney. Raising the question, which a couple people had raised before on Discord, and I want to come to that. Is there any question of the power of the ring being involved in this vision? I doubt it. I can't imagine that the Ring of Power is enabling or creating Frodo's rings, because that just doesn't seem to fit with the power, any of the power of the ring that we've seen. Yeah, Flammifer, I'm not thinking that the ring gives visions either. And Sam makes the excellent point that even if the ring were in the business of creating dreams, he's guessing it probably wouldn't happen in Tom Bombadil's house. Possibly. Yeah, I mean, look, on the one hand, I mean, it seems hard to avoid the fact that Frodo is the one having prophetic dreams, and he's also the one carrying the, super duper ring of power. It's, it's definitely, seems a coincidence, right? But I just, knowing what we know of the ring of power and seeing what we see of the dreams, I don't think either one fits together, Now, Mike, that I could get behind. Mike says maybe the ring had a hand in Frodo's negative interpretation, right? So Frodo receives this dream, which is meant to be an encouraging dream, right? Gandalf was captured, but don't worry, he's on the way, being, I would argue, it seems to be the message of the dream to Frodo, and instead he wakes up in a terror because he thinks the dream is about the Black Riders, that the ring could sort of distort his own perceptions or understanding of the dream. That would certainly fit with what the ring seems to be trying to do to him. The ring seems to be trying to get him to... Remember, the number one thing that the ring has acted on Frodo to try to do, the number one temptation, of course, put on the ring is the number one thing to take the ring for himself, is the number one temptation that he has gotten. But the number two temptation has been to leave his friends and go off on his own. Right? We've seen that come up a couple times at the Barrow. We've seen it come up in Tom Bombadil's house. Even in standing on the table in the common room of the Prancing Pony, he had the desire to put on the ring and disappear from the silly situation. But this doesn't seem to fit with that at all. However, to twist an encouraging vision into something that sounds like they are coming for you, like you must find some way to escape, wouldn't it be best to put on the ring and escape from this terrifying situation? That does seem to fit. That does seem to hold together. So, Mike, that I can definitely easily believe. Now, Fourth Dauntless, I wonder. Yeah, Praise says that the ring is scared of the power of friendship, and of course, Praise, as we will see, it has a reason to be afraid of that, right? Yeah. Now, Fourth Dauntless was just saying maybe the connection goes the other way. Gandalf is a Maya of dreams, and his thoughts are probably bent on Frodo and brooding on his recent imprisonment. Both we know to be true. Maybe Gandalf accidentally reached out to Frodo. Well, that's the thing. It would have to be accidental, right? Because Gandalf wouldn't be astonished if he had had any active hand in reaching out to Frodo that way. I'm not sure I'd see it as Gandalf accidentally doing it. Not sure that that's possible. But maybe the Home Office was paying attention. If Gandalf used to hang out in Lorien, not the, nouveau Lorien, but the old Lorien, maybe he, maybe Irmo took a hand in that. I don't know. Let's see. When does Frodo put on the ring for the first time? Oh, well, he's had it on a number of times already. Putting it on at the Prancing Pony is after the dream. Even putting it on in the House of Tom Bombadil is after the dream. I'm pretty sure. The "Show me the precious ring, Frodo," "Show me the precious ring" comment by Tom Bombadil is after. I believe it's the next day after they have their dreams. So, yeah, he's yeah. Yeah, that's the second evening, Mad Violinist, right? And the dream is the first night, right? And they don't dream the second night, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, okay. But back to Gandalf's comments here. I was in an evil plight, and those who know me will agree that I have seldom been in such need and do not bear such misfortune well. It's an interesting comment. I have seldom been in such need. Of course, I can't help but think about the time when Gandalf is stuck up a tree with wargs and goblins around underneath, and the narrator of The Hobbit is, makes it pretty clear that Gandalf thinks he's done for at that point. But I guess he would probably, Gandalf, if he were making a list of times when he had been in great need, would probably have included the whole pine tree incident among them. Yeah. But of course, I love that parallel because of in my mind, it plays as a kind of synecdoche of the way the story has grown since The Hobbit, right? In both books, we see Gandalf stuck up on top of a high place, right? And surrounded by orcs and wolves, right? But they, in both cases, right, surrounded in a ring by goblins and wolves, and facing the prospect of his apparently certain destruction until he's rescued by an eagle, right? I mean, the parallel is pretty striking, actually, when you start thinking about it. But the scale, right? The scale of the two stories, from I'm up a tree hucking burning pine cones down to, I am trapped on the pinnacle of Orthanc. It's as I say, it's like synecdoche, right? It's like the part standing for the whole, right? It's like a little glimpse of what it means to say the story of the Hobbit has grown up and changed in the Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Green Great Dragon says the "no, I will not come up" makes more sense now. Like, Gandalf has a fear of heights, right? Well, yeah, I mean, look what happens when he climbs up the mountain with the Balrog, right? Exactly. The Pinecone incident is a type for the Orthanc incident. Yes. Yep. And you're right, Matt. Gandalf will also be surrounded by orcs and wolves on a high place in the Battle of Five Armies when he gets rescued by eagles again, too. And, of course, Matt, he'll also be on a high place surrounded by orcs and wolves when he's rescued by eagles at the Black Gate as well, right? This is kind of a trend in Gandalf's life. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're Gandalf and you find yourself trapped in a high place surrounded by goblins and wolves, you've got them right where you want them, right? Like, things are going according to plan when that happens, and I guess that's sort of the joke, right? Those who know me will agree that I have seldom been in such need, but those who know me well will know that every time I have been in such need, it's looked exactly like this. And therefore, those of you who know my story well will be able to guess very easily what happens next, right? Because what always happens next when I am in that kind of need. Yes. Gandalf the Grey, caught like a fly in a spider's treacherous web, yet even the most subtle spiders may leave a weak thread. Now somebody was making a really good point before I started talking about the parallel. Let's see. I'm forgetting who it was. Was it Flammifer who made this earlier point that I was wanting to go back to? About the spider and the web? Who's talking about the spiders and webs? I can't find it. Fort Thomas, was that you? Might have been you. Yes, there it is. That was it. Thank you for Dauntless. This paragraph is basically Gandalf's plan in miniature. Even the most subtle spider may leave a weak thread. It's setting up the desperate gamble on the fool's hope. Yes, exactly. It is really fun to see the parallels between the two, right? Saruman's plan is undone because the subtle spider has left a weak thread. Well, so has Sauron, right? And it's all about finding that weak thread. And Sauron only has one weak thread, right? Sauron's weak thread is the ring itself. Sauron has made himself vulnerable by making the ring. And so therefore, and moreover, his, sort of psychology is such that he's not going to anticipate the destruction of the ring. But, yeah, absolutely. I think, it's good music. I was thinking about another parallel with Smaug. You're right, Forthon. Sauron's weak thread is the way he thinks. He weighs his enemies in the scales of his own malice. Yes. No, Flamifer, Gandalf does know that destroying the ring will destroy Sauron. He suggested that back in chapter 2. Well, I keep saying back in chapter 2. This is chapter 2. Back in the Shadows of the Past. It's known. It is known that much of Sauron's old power has passed into the ring, and if it's destroyed, that he will be laid low. I think, by the way, this metaphor about Saruman as the spider, and the web as the web of Saruman's treachery, is it also that it's a metaphor that really reinforces this picture that we had of Saruman laying his trap. I mean, this has been a trap. He's not just he didn't just want to talk to Gandalf. He's not just been hoping to pump Gandalf for information. He was not merely recruiting Gandalf. He was entrapping Gandalf from the beginning. We talked about this when we talked about the layout of Orthanc, right, and how he clearly did work as hard as he needed to work in order to arrange to make sure that Gandalf would not suspect when he came in. So, yes. Anyway, it's clear that Gandalf is now thinking the same way. That he was trapped from the beginning, and the image of Sauron brooding here in his making his home, making his tower, making his stronghold into a trap to ensnare Gandalf, and of course it also reminds me, I think, remembering ahead again, to the metaphor that Gandalf is going to use when he's going to compare Fourth Dauntless Sauron to a spider, right, about trapping the fly and taking the sting. Remember, he's not going to swat them like a fly. He's going to try to trap the fly and take the sting. That's, so we see Gandalf sort of taking that, applying this thinking directly to Sauron and wanting to exploit it. Good. And no, Nancy, I don't think Tolkien liked spiders very much. That seems pretty clear. Good. Yeah, Green Great Dragon is also remembering ahead to when Sauron's mind is going to shake free of his webs and stratagems. Yes. Absolutely. Yet even the most subtle spiders may leave a weak thread. Okay. Terlonio, I was just trying to think just now of, is there ever a moment when spiders are referred to, or are used in a positive sense in any way at any point in Tolkien's legendarium? And I can't think of any examples. I can't think of any examples of positive spider talk, positive spider imagery. Well, there's the innocent spiders in the treetops in Mirkwood musical, but they're not doing any harm, I guess, unless you're a moth. But even there, he's enjoying looking at the butterflies, right? He's looking at the black monarch butterflies. And then he notices the spiders that are up there to try to kill the butterflies. So even those spiders don't come across perfectly well, I think. Yeah. Bilbo has a poem with gossamer in it. That's pretty indirect. Yeah, even in the Errantry poem. Yeah, I know Tolkien. I was thinking of Tolkien's letter there. Draken Tarachne was quoting Tolkien's letter when he says that he doesn't dislike spiders particularly and has no urge to kill them, and he usually rescues them when those whom I find in the bath. It's a famous comment in one of his letters. I'm willing to believe him when he says that, but his fiction would certainly give no indication of it. Yeah. Did he ever read Charlotte's Web? I don't know any evidence that he did. Yeah. Charlotte's Web is a pretty extraordinary book in that way. As Mudmore is saying, there are not a whole lot of friendly spiders. Right. And you're thinking, Gilga Lady of, I sit beside the fire and think, right, of yellow leaves and gossamer and autumns as they were. Right. Well, I mean, you also get like the spider webs covered with droplets of water in the mist when they're leaving Buckland as a, sort of a beautiful thing, but that doesn't make spiders good. Yeah. Hey, that's a good reference, JJ. He's remembering Sam's reference to learning to walk like a spider when he crosses the rope into Lorien. That's at least not an actively like insulting or evil phrase. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's Turambar, I agree. Sam is not having a pleasant experience at the time, right? But yeah. No, I don't think there's any positive views of spiders. There could be, but I don't think there are in the Lord of the Rings or anywhere in the Legendarium, really. Yeah. Spiders turn out to be almost as evil as cats. Yeah. Turns out. Oh, you're right. Bilbo writing with a spidery script, though it's an insult to his writing, so I don't think it's meant to be. It's not complimentary. Google it. Yeah, there is this story of Tolkien getting bitten by a tarantula when he was a kid in South Africa, but he was like, he doesn't even remember it. He said, I mean, he heard the story that he got. He does not didn't even. He was like 2 at the time. Yeah. But anyway, okay. Yeah, you're right. Dragon Tarachne says, as somebody who adores spiders and is distressed when people kill them, it's a tremendous weight off his mind when I read that Tolkien quote about rescuing them. That's good. And I have to admit, Dragon Tarachne, I rescue spiders myself. I try to. The rest of my family is anti-spider pretty strongly, and I try to convince them to let spiders live when they find spiders in the rest of the house, because I hate mosquitoes. You see, mosquitoes are far more evil than spiders, in my opinion. Most of the spiders pretty well leave me alone. The mosquitoes just don't. So in my basement, which is where I broadcast from, I have a number of spiders that I cultivate here. There's one right there I'm looking at right now, because I encourage them to spin their webs and eat the mosquitoes. Anyway, yeah. So, but I agree, Nancy. Ungoliant as a mosquito would not quite have had the same effect, I think. Yeah. It's a much less scary villain. Anyway, okay. I'm tempted to go on to the next slide, but I shouldn't go on to the next slide. It is too late. But we will get to the second most important Radagast scene in which he does not appear. But last time I think he's ever going to get referred to in the Lord of the Rings, if I'm not mistaken, in the next paragraph. So we will we'll do that next time. You want to peek at the next slide? Oh, look, it's Radagast. There he is. Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about Radagast falling or not falling for next time. But awesome. Thanks, everybody. So thanks for Twitter folks for joining me. I'm going to shut down the Twitter feed now. But feel free to join us on twitch.tv/SignumU for our in-game Lord of the Rings online field trip. See you guys later. All right. And
evening all.
We'll say goodnight to those of you who are... Oh, and I'll put my earbuds in so I can hear game sounds in Valori. Okay. There we are. And so, yeah, so for those of you who can't stay for the field trip, I'll say goodnight to you too. Oop, hang on. What's going on here?
All right. Filling up now.
Okay, great.
Save us some time than me trying to figure out who at the stable actually came with us.
Right. Right. That's a good plan. Yeah, so I took advantage of the big sale in the Lotro store over the Thanksgiving weekend and got the other Valar thing and leveled Narnian up to level 120. So he's not 95 anymore. He's level 120 now. So he's substantially less squishy than he was. He still has no XP or virtues or anything like that. But at least he'll be a little bit harder to kill and won't res back in Bree anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm still totally carrying my level 5 staff, Emily. Absolutely. Narnian is a pacifist. He doesn't really attack anybody. I think I have a box of weapons. Rumor is I have a box of weapons, but I never really use them. Tekelvik, you don't have to leave Discord. You can, but you don't have to. I'll keep monitoring both feeds. There. So, yeah. So we're gonna head to Holtvis again, and then we can go back to the excavation and kind of work out from there.
Okay. Sounds good.
So if we've been included in the raid, should we go to the stable master?
Yep.
Hey, maybe I can get the milestone now.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I'm level 120. I'm level 120 now.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Narnian is so stacked.
Or at least not have to use a mithril coin every time you go.
Right. No, I think actually after I opened it the once, it was okay.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm with you about spiders. You know, when I moved out to the country, I was your typical kid from, like, almost DC, where it's just kind of like, ew, kill them all. But
right.
then I moved out here, and I discovered there were worse things than spiders.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, there is nothing I hate more than mosquitoes who are at large in like rooms where I'm sitting and working for a long time, or like the like especially in the summertime when you're wearing shorts and your legs are under the desk and like you're constantly being distracted by being paranoid about like swatting at your ankles and stuff because there's a mosquito. Oh, it's awful.
It's
and
horrific. Yeah,
and then of course worse when you're
either.
Yeah. Then it's even worse when you're like when you're trying to sleep and mosquito is just like going to town. It's awful.
Yes. No, so I welcome my 8-legged friends as long as they pay rent.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I've got like tons of wolf spiders in my basement here.
We have one that lives in the mailbox. We call her Virginia Wolf Spider.
There you go.
What do you need?
Virginia sounds like a good name for a wolf spider.
It's a pun, Virginia Wolf, but
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course, and you actually live in Virginia too, right? So,
yeah,
I mean,
we actually live in. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the wolf spiders are native to Virginia too. I think they're actually like Aranis virginianus or something like that.
There you go. So it's an entirely.
They carry
apt.
their babies on their backs
That's right.
until the babies eat them.
Right.
Spiders are cool.
Speaking of really cheerful spider stories, okay. Let's see. Where did that milestone go? That's it, right? Burning up. So I'm just running over to the milestone since I'm.
Oh yeah, do that.
Since I'm here. Woohoo! Done with Tarman Sursa. Okay. There we go. Now I can just milestone straight here. No more riding across town to the... Okay. And now the deer and squirrels won't attack me anymore.
Yeah.
Probably.
Some of them will.
Right. Maybe not quite so much.
Not from halfway across the map, anyway.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Awesome. Let's... are people here?
Yep.
I think so.
By the way, so who's this green stand? Your wolf there. When I came in, I was standing and your wolf was like at eye level and its feet are in the bushes here, so I couldn't see that it was what it looked like somebody was wearing that wolf as a hat. Like it was right at head level and I couldn't figure out what that wolf was doing, but now I see from the other side.
Wolf.
Okay. All right, are we ready?
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Where are we headed now? We're going back to the quarry, or?
Yeah, let's go back to the dig site. Oh, wait. We were looking at that island last time, weren't we?
That's right. We were going to go back to the quarry, and then we got sidetracked by the island.
That's right. Yeah. We didn't get to go inside. Is there anything cool inside the island?
Yeah. We didn't get a chance to go in there, did we?
Okay, no,
I just
inside
had a
the
look.
inside
It
the
looked like-
instance in there.
It looked
here.
like ruins.
All right, let's just go back.
Ruins. Yeah.
Let's get, yeah, mostly ruins, as if
With
that's
beasts,
nothing.
no.
I know.
Right. Yeah, I know. Like, there are ruins? Wow, we're there. Okay. So, all right. So I am loving our theory about the, whoa, I kind of expected to be starting to swim, but apparently I'm not swimming.
I think you hit the sweet spot for the
I
day.
did. Wow. Look at that. I just rode all the way across the river.
Yeah, the rest of us are hoofing it.
Oh, okay. That was unexpected. Yeah, so just to recap our theory for those of you who missed it, this looked like Arnorian stone and everything from the start. And then we did find a very clear Rudauran symbol on the inside of the big fortress at the top of the hill. All of these looked like defensive fortifications, not pleasure palaces.
Yes.
But then we got in here and it was, hey, that was my horse. Then we got in right to here and we saw really clearly the scepter of Illuminus with the Rudauran, clearly not just Arnorian, but Rudauran symbols, the forest crown. And so we decided, looking at the map, that this was an outpost. And Valoria, I really loved your theory about how this was an outpost probably made by Elendil, or even either by Elendil on the way down or by Isildur on the way home and that's why he had gone this way. Isildur had gone this way, was to kind of check in or build up more, kind of maybe he was going to leave some of his men here, in the outpost or whatever. As this was like the Arnorian outpost on the other side, because it's just on the other side of the pass from the Trollshaws. And they would clearly have been thinking, especially Isildur after the battle, would have been thinking very much about the communications between the North Kingdom and the South Kingdom. So anyway, I got down there was where I died last time. Is there anything up around back? Anything interesting over
Not
here?
seeing anything.
I didn't get to see this part. I wasn't assuming that there was. Most of these ruins are unmarked, except for that one very prominent thing that we found. But anyway, so I do love that. And then of course it would have been maintained to some extent by Arnor, and then claimed by Rudaur, which makes sense because Rudaur certainly would have been the one in the geographic position to claim this. Well, let's see. Can we go in?
Yeah, I think we can go inside. Yeah.
You can just walk in.
Yep.
Hooray!
Huzzah! Huzzah!
Oh wait, Greenstand needs an invite to the.
I
We got
got
it
it.
sorted.
Oh, you got him. Okay.
I got it. Yep.
Okay.
I'm putting on the other one so there's loremasters
Alright.
on both sides.
Huh,
Trying
look
to
at
keep things
this.
A little even.
Look at these like hinges. That's a little different. You can barely see them. Ooh, and a complicated ceiling with it's not a Numenorian star.
No, but we've seen the ceiling before many times.
Hey, I'm gaining XP for the first time in my life. Like seriously. That was some of the first
thanks to our
XP I have ever gotten.
Yeah, I feel like we've
that
seen
is. In
this-
fact, those orcs that were just killed are the first XP that Narnian has ever received.
Not right.
Wow. Because even the quests and stuff that I did were so under level for me at the time, I didn't get XP for them. For the sword quests. Okay. Sorry. All right, I'm looking around. The ceiling was very interesting in there, and in here again, too. Looks almost elvish. And here, of course, you can see the hinges and fixtures of the door more clearly. I don't remember seeing anything quite like that before. Maybe I have and I've forgotten, but the wooden beams are interesting too. And I keep thinking that there are runes around the arch. It's not. It's just weathered stone, I think, but it's weathered stone. It's like weathered in the pattern that looks like runes.
Yeah, that could be water doing that.
Yeah, I suspect so. Okay. All right. Well, it doesn't look too very eventful. Look at all this ivy. Why is there ivy growing indoors? How does it live? Can't get any sun in here.
I don't know. It's one of those plants where it grows whether you want it to or not.
That's kind of true. My horse leveled up for the first time ever. This is so exciting. Yeah, look, the Warsteed leveling window just popped up because it's the first level my Warsteed has ever received. Oh, that's fun. Okay. All right. So is this like a great hall of some kind?
It looks like there's a bookcase and a podium over here.
Yeah, a library. Look at this. These chairs are lovely. That is not evil upholstery right there. This upholstery must predate the Rudauran period because that's never evil upholstery.
Yeah. A little 8-wheeled sort of chakra drawing. I'm not sure what that is.
Looks like a shield.
Yeah, like a lotus flower shield.
What, the design?
That's the Order of the White Lotus.
Yeah.
Although this is all not work. Up on the podium, there's like an 8-pronged design.
Huh. You mean in the carpet?
On the carpet and the podium.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
It does give rise to my theories that this was a merchant outpost before it was a military outpost.
Or after, because
Or after.
Especially with the fall of Rudaur. The fall of Rudaur was some time ago, and
Yeah, this upholstery would have rotted away. It was
Yeah. Look, there's a chandelier still there.
what's left of it. It looks pretty rusted.
Yeah. It does. The wooden beams continue to interest me. It's like not like a vaulted ceiling at all. Just flat beams feels unusual for a structure, like a defensive structure like this.
Ooh, pile of bones.
Portcullis and balcony overlooking.
Kind of looks like a falcon shape at the armrests of the chairs.
Yeah.
Armrests.
Looks like an oubliette or something down there.
Oh, I see it
way
on
to
the
get
front of the armrest, right? I see it. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I appreciate the fact that everybody in chat is actually not talking about the story in game that happens here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no spoilers.
I'm keen to guess. I like to conclude what we can conclude from observation, and then I will explore the story in a different context, the in-game story.
Like a little bench here, beautifully, intricately carved bench surrounded by filth.
Oh, yeah. Little inlaid bench. Yeah, there's the falcon heads again. Though they look a little bit more like chicken heads from this angle. But let's go with falcon.
Or eagles?
Eagles.
Considering
the proximity. Yeah, that seems likely.
What just attacked us? I couldn't even see it.
Sorrow lights. They're things that can debuff you.
Sorrow lights?
Is that like a...
Is it like a gloom water?
Little spell of gloom waters,
Oh, are they the little glowing balls?
Trail?
Yeah, the little purple things that are trying to debuff you, but thankfully you've got shield wall on you, so you're not taking any damage.
Okay. Well, that is kind. Though Darnian has so many morale points right now. It's just...
I know.
Not funny.
It does look like an oubliette. I'm not really seeing anything
It
down there.
does. Is there a floor?
It looks like a floor
goes
and a little gallery on the bottom floor.
way
but
down, but like 3 stores down at least.
Yeah.
It is way down there, the floor.
And nothing at the top.
And there's water
for this place to exist.
So why are there bars barring the balcony? So there's like balconies across either side of this oubliette or whatever it is.
Or drainage.
Fighting pit.
And is it? Is this just child-proofing or what? I mean, it's not very good child-proofing, as any child could just walk right through it. But yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I guess it's the thought that counts.
Mm.
Though I don't suppose I would want to say to new parents that it was only the thought that counted when it came to child-proofing, but... Oh, look, this model has bookcases on the front, too.
Oh, yeah. No, the other one did, too, if I
Did
recall.
it? Maybe I didn't
Yeah, they're
notice.
all empty, though, so
Look at all this shelving, but yes, no books.
It's like IKEA.
I wonder what its Swedish name would be.
Klarna. Swedish for smoother shopping.
Another one of those benches. None of the doors are functional.
Oh, something glowing.
Oh, what, the paper on the floor?
Yeah, it's one of the lost lures.
Lost Lore of the Vales. There we go.
Somewhere yet he lurks and lingers, scrabbling with his scabby fingers neath forest dark or dusky hill. Old mad Ub, he hungers still. So like
And then the Mewlips feed. Okay. And the Mewlips feed.
Old mad Ub.
Yep, there are several different of these called lost lore things. They first start in Mordor content, so Weekend will start running across these. And many of them are spoken.
Right. Okay. So we got these 2 halls with small tables and no hearths. So there's no, it's not like a great hall. It's like a dining chamber kind of deal. But look at these bookcases on both sides. Right. As JJ says, it's not exactly a great hall. It's more of a mediocre hall.
It's a meh hall.
Yeah, something like that.
It looks like just a collection of lore, but they're obviously not trying to give any comfort more than the books themselves. This is for
Right.
people who enjoy readings, whether there's a fire or not.
All those purple balls are scary looking. I hadn't seen one before. Okay. Well, no other indications though I tend to think that these bookcases are new. My theory, as you said, merchant outpost, my theory is that after the fall of Rudauer, which was after all like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
After the fall of Rudauer, there was still this stronghold on this island, which is obviously right on the trade route down the river.
Yep.
So it would have been taken over, and the only people who would have been coming here might have been merchants. So
Makes sense. Although it has since fallen into disrepair, as we can see.
and if they were like, hey, look, a perfectly good stronghold, and JJ saying the raised area in front of the bookcases puts me in mind of auctions. You could hold auctions in these rooms.
Oh yeah, and that'd be the very thing if you just got a shipment of stuff in.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out last time, this is the perfect crux between elven and human and dwarf nations.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's because this wood all looks too fresh. I mean, look at the weathering of the beams in the ceiling by contrast to the the neatness of the wood here. It's just, I think the wood is substantially more recent.
So intricate.
Yeah.
It's definitely for show. So somebody building this is definitely like, let's show how many good craftsmen we can get to make these auction tables.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it must be. Okay.
Oh man, I finally got to look at these dark balls. They look like Gengar from Pokemon. Pokemon. I said it like.
Yeah, and this one only has the one. You're right, this one does have the shelves in front of it. I just didn't notice them. From straight on, you don't see them as much. From an angle, they're more clear.
There's a lot of filth and fog in the way.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's what must be. And they didn't live here, like the merchants didn't dwell here.
It's a big enough place to have. I mean, there's definitely enough room in here where there could have been living quarters, but
could have been.
If so, it's not in any area we can get to. That's where we came in.
Yeah. Oh. The door handles are like the other ones, but in much better shape. Interesting.
I think we've seen these hinges a few times before.
Maybe.
These are definitely Arnorian doors.
Maybe. Okay. Well, it's starting to get late. Let's head. Now that I don't have to worry so much about dying all the time, maybe we can just head quickly over to the dig site. I want to see if we can see if there is any. Well, so here's one question. I don't suppose Saruman is in like an Indiana Jones situation, is he?
Well, yeah, I made the joke actually with the big ham-fisted digging into the quarry over there. They use a bulldozer to find a china cup.
Right. No, but I was thinking about them about digging in the wrong place. Are we sure that he's digging in the right place?
Well, obviously not, because he doesn't get the ring.
Well, it's like that's a barn door situation as much as anything else. But I guess we could just swim downriver from here. Kind of slow.
It's a long swim.
It's a long swim.
Yeah,
That's crossing.
Easier overland.
Yeah, it would be quicker overland. Change my mind.
Also, I think the speed of the river picks up quite a bit.
Well, which you'd think would make it more efficient. But that is so. What I'm asking is, we do suppose that he did in fact find the site where Isildur. Well, yes, we know he did, because we know that he found his bones, Isildur's bones. In the appendix, it says so. Okay. And so presumably, therefore, we can safely conclude that the dig site is in fact on the very place where Isildur was killed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably where they found the bones, or where he did use the bones washed up from.
All right. So that's the dig site over there, right? It's kind of nice that is it dawn now?
It just turned to daytime.
Yeah.
It's 4 dawn. Nice. Okay. So that's good. Because wasn't it dark last time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
Pretty sure.
We were running about half an hour later last time.
Right. All right. Yeah, so let's just see what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to kind of get the lay of the land over there a little bit and try to reconstruct the actual, like the battle and the situation. It's going to be hard because obviously their excavation will have disrupted the terrain very significantly.
Yeah.
And it was like some 3,000 years ago on a riverbed, so, there's lots of reason to think that... okay, this is probably good a place as any to cross over, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
We already kind of went further south of the excavation. Okay, well, now that it's daytime and I can actually see, let's think about this here. Sveinholg. Oh, I was afraid there were going to be pigs. Okay. Whoa. Arnie went under completely there for a second.
Whoa, all the bosses are chasing after us too. Ever seen
the boss
swimming
pigs?
giant spider?
Whoa, a swimming giant spider.
Yeah, don't stop, keep going.
Well, that's kind of cute.
That was disturbing. We were just talking about how much we like spiders, and I'm sitting here going, do I now?
Yes, exactly.
Really?
Not that much. Okay. So
I take comfort that a spider that size would explode under the pressure of its own body.
Yes. Yeah, I gather the hydraulics really just don't work for giant spiders. Okay. All right. So I'm Isildur, and I'm leading an army of Númenóreans. First of all, I'm on this bank of the river. Why? The other bank of the river is dry, and Now, that's something that can change, obviously.
Yeah, we don't know where the course of the river was. 1,000 years plus.
Well, 3,000 years ago, really.
3,000 plus.
Yeah, long time ago. The very depth of the excavation suggests that, the terrain has changed a good bit.
It does imply Saruman's not quite sure where he's supposed to end up.
Yeah.
They might have found Isildur's body in an area that was not in water but completely buried under the earth, which would imply the riverbed had changed a bit.
Right. And just looking at the map for a second, I mean, this whole area, obviously the whole Gladden Fields area here is very wet. Right. So I'm looking, I mean, obviously, what I'm doing is I'm looking around at like elements of the landscape, which would definitely have been here 3,000 years ago. Like those stone hills over there.
Yeah, those would have been there. My big question is whether this series of marshy bogs and stuff like that was not once a more direct river course that got broken up by oxbows and such, which eventually bled into each other.
Right, exactly. If this were merely, because I mean, right now the way things are, the opposite side of the river that we were just riding down would seem like the obvious terrain. It's sort of shelfy, hill country there, so you could certainly march an army along there. But this, if we imagine it without the standing water, right? If this were a flat plain which had not yet been over. Had kind of, as you say, the river course has changed and things, that it would have just been flat plain and therefore much more attractive to march an army over. And as JJ says, Lothlorien and the mountain pass to Rivendell were both on this side of the river. So if it was at all passable 3,000 years ago, a road on this side would make sense. Exactly. They would have just passed up through Lothlorien, presumably through it. They wouldn't have needed to skirt Lothlorien.
Yeah.
So yeah, they would have probably come through.
Like this area of water is also some runoff that bleds from the Kidzul Kala. Here, in the Misty Mountains, there's a little lake that leads from a glacier stream away to the west.
And I wonder even the extent to which that lake is newer.
Yeah, and all these islands in the middle implied that the water of the river, as young rivers are, was much more twisty and curvy. But then it sort of it cut itself off to create these little oxbow lakes, which turned into islands.
Right. Okay, so you're Isildur and you're marching down with your army on, let's call it a flat, dry plain that is crossed by the river here, right? By the tributary that comes out. And that's where you're attacked. So the orcs attack you. Now, where do the orcs come from?
Mountains, I should think.
From where?
Misty Mountains?
From the hills, yeah. So the orcs come down out of the hills and they trap you here. Now, this would be an obvious place to become trapped. The orcs would have waited until the army had marched up from the south and come to the place. You can see the winding course, the main primary course of the river itself, right? So imagining that's just a river and the rest of it's a flat plain, a dry plain, the army will have marched up and come just to the point where it had to cross the river. And while it was trapped sort of between these two rivers is when the orcs come down maybe along the the southern bank of the river. I don't know what the river is called, the little stream that comes down from Kidzul Kala, as you say.
It doesn't say, but...
Yeah. The orcs probably come down the southern bank of that river and attack them here. And JJ, I can certainly imagine they would have moved in from the south, cutting off escape to Lorien. So yeah, they come in, sweeping in around there.
Not to mention broad flat land and being chased by wargs.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, this was a Númenórean army that we're talking about, so they wouldn't have been. They had to be enormously heavily outnumbered in order to be seriously threatened by orcs and wargs.
Yeah,
But it was a night ambush as well, which would have the war bows of the Númenóreans, of course, were very famous, so they wouldn't have had any chance to do anything there. So there are all these different sites that he's got here. So then, assuming again, looking at the big map, the battle happens around here. Isildur would have gone off across the river. But of course, as you say, we don't know exactly where the edge of the river was.
Yeah.
But let's say this hill that's here, let's say it was a hill. Right, and he would have crept off. So it would have been down. What's this banner here for? Just an orc banner.
Okay.
It's a little weird. Anyway, so it would have been somewhere, because we're not really to the river proper. Let me head over to the other side, to the edge of the river, what probably would have been the river. Exactly, JJ. So Isildur was in a desperate situation in a high place surrounded by orcs and wargs. Yep. Exactly. Uh-oh.
It had probably seen them earlier and followed them well before nightfall.
Yeah. There's a forlorn glimmer?
Yeah, I think the glimmers here are just very emotional glimmers.
Apparently. Moody. Okay, so this is the... again, hard to say where the edge of the river was. But I can't think...
My only theory is that the lake had not bled through yet at the time, causing this marshland.
I can't think that their excavations are where the ring was. I mean, unless the river was much wider then, which I suppose is possible. I mean, the river... Yeah. The river would have had to be all the way... Because, I mean, for him to be shot in the reeds at the edge and then to end up way up in here...
Let's see. Are you looking at the map right now, or?
No, I'm walking up the top of the hill. This is the biggest excavation, the one that we got into last time. I'm just trying to imagine that this was the edge of the river. Could be, I suppose.
Could be, or it could have. You see on the map where there's that natural path from Kudzalkala to the main river.
Mm-hmm.
It could have followed that curve and then moved flat over time.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know how young this river is. I don't know.
Well, it's not very. I mean,
it's not,
which one?
It's not
which
very
one?
young, but also comparatively to like Valyria and who knows, you know?
Well, and the Anduin was there when the elves crossed over, when the elves went to Valinor in the first place.
That's true. That's true. So
it gets a mention.
That's still a lot. That's still a lot of time.
It is. It is. That's it's not much time in a geological time frame, though. I love the clouds that are hanging around the top of that mountain. That's pretty awesome.
Yes. What's on fire up there? Are they burning leaves?
I don't know. Lots of them, apparently.
That time of year, you know?
It's the mist.
Like all that.
It's the mist on the misty mountains. I guess so.
Yeah. Okay,
hence the name.
Okay. I see it now. That's why it's called the Misty Mountains.
There we go. Yeah, JJ, that's what I'm thinking too. I mean, this slope. this feels like it's. I mean, I don't know. Land can change a good deal in 3,000 years, especially right next to a river. So I should, I suppose, suspend my disbelief about it. It just, though, I guess down here, it's not that.
But it also does explain
far
all of
above.
the different dig sites in different locations. You could see that Saruman would be plotting the course of the river over 3,000 years and trying to place his best guess for each time period where the ring
Yeah,
might have
maybe
ended
so.
up.
And there are hills on the other side, not the far hills on the other side, but
Yeah, the only
even-
difference is they're on rock and this looks definitely like packed up mud.
yes. Yeah, I mean, they dig down to rock here, but yeah, okay. I suppose I can believe that this might have been the plain at some point before a lot of it was washed away. So if like the level that we're standing at right now is about where the ground was, you know, the ground level of the plain 3,000 years ago, before this delta got all kind of carved out from it.
Okay. That would explain why the cliffs are so steep now. It would not have been as steep back then.
Right.
The other side of the
The
river
other
bank,
side,
I mean.
yeah. Okay. Still a little hard for me to believe that they found Isildur's bones in this quarry.
I
Jade-
have no comment because there's a story in the game that tells what you're wondering about.
Yeah. Well, that's okay.
I suppose it makes sense if the quarry was like made of like shale or something.
Right. I love the dredger.
Yay, level 122.
Nice.
Oh, a Gladden toad, huh? Oh, and then I said we saw some. Well, not oath breakers. Where did these spirits get lost?
What are they called?
Lost spirits.
Lost spirits.
Do we ever get to interview any of them?
Sometimes, depends on the area. Oh, look at all the dead people.
Dead orcs.
Yeah.
You see dead faces?
No,
And I
in
see
the
dead
water.
bodies with the white hand on them.
Oh, dead torsos.
Flies.
Yeah. Where the flies killed them?
Gross.
Probably.
Maybe they drank from the water.
Yeah, the floating corpses do suggest it's probably not particularly potable water at this point.
Not anymore, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. See, now here's some.
Then again, orcs are designed to imbibe water that would be toxic to others.
Foul air and poison you're thinking of? Okay.
Considering the state of the bodies, they're fairly recent kills, though.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But, okay. So I'm just looking at the rocks over here, which of course are kind of interesting from a thinking about runoff and the terrain here. What's on fire across the river?
I don't know. Maybe we can check that out next time.
Yeah. So, okay.
Oh.
Well, having thought a little bit then more about this as an archaeological site and about the Númenórean battle, my next question is, where did Smeagol live? He must have lived around here. So moving forward many centuries, I am wondering, They would have left, but is there any evidence? I would expect to find evidence. So let's look around the Gladden Fields a little bit next time to see if we can find any evidence of Hobbit ruins.
Okay.
We'll see. Maybe they lived in those huts we saw in Holdfish, Slackfish. Maybe. Yeah, JJ says his grandmother had many such objects, so we should look for a place with a lot of rings of power. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, we'll know we found it when there are like a ton of rings of power just hanging around on, you know.
Dwarf ring, man ring, dwarf ring. All garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll look about and see if we can find anything. I'm a little bit curious as to why that hill is on fire, but we will.
Oh, there's something there.
I figured there's something there. So we'll take a look over there. We'll search the northern part of the. I guess we should go. I'm going to go counterclockwise around the Gladden Fields. Then we can go up to Kidzulkala, since we're be close to there, and see what's around up there. And
Sounds
then we
good.
can continue to circle around the lands here. All right. Awesome. Well, I should let folks go. It's getting late. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This was another fun field trip this week. And we will continue our explorations in this strange new territory next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.